Nigeria in figures, Nigeria in reality. Well, let's talk more about that with Dr. Yemi Khaled, the Chief Economist with KPMG, joins us virtually from Lagos. Dr. Khaled, thank you so much for your time and good morning. The reality of Nigeria this time is inflation, and FDC has even said it's going to go even higher to 22.7. We're expecting numbers. You used to be at the MBS, so you know some of these things even better than I do. So 22.2 to now expected to go 22.7 if FDC's projection is correct. And this may even get higher than this with the removal of the subsidy as we have seen so far. For you, how can businesses hedge at this time? How can they protect themselves and survive these trying times?
Well, I think for 2023, anyway, businesses had already prepared their strategy for the 2023 financial year. And of course, this came as a surprise. Yes, politicians, government had been talking about removing the subsidy for a while, but I don't think a lot of businesses took it seriously. It's not the first time that government and politicians have talked about removing subsidy. So they are planned, whether it's households or businesses, they have not really factored this into their plans, and it's going to be a serious challenge for them, especially for micro, small, medium-scale enterprises. Unlike the larger ones, they are less likely to, they use a lot more PMS in their operations, unlike the larger ones that use more diesel, more gas, and so on, and a lot less PMS. But the micro, small-scale enterprises are going to be more affected by this, because they tend to use more PMS. They also are smaller in scale, so they don't have the opportunity like the larger ones to also push in the impact of the shock. At this point, I think what needs to be done, as far as businesses are concerned, they're going to have a shock on both sides of their businesses. One on the demand side, because obviously, their consumers are having their purchasing power reduced. So as a result, they'll end up demanding a lot less of their products. So they're going to have declining sales, but at the same time, they're having increases in their cost of production, directly from the increase in the PMS, indirectly from transportation costs. And there's even a chance that their staff might demand higher wages to cushion the effect of the PMS increase. So they're having higher costs, they're having lower demand. It's a very challenging period for business in the country. I would say, in my opinion, the way they can hedge against these challenges would be to, on the income side, maybe expand the level of opportunities they have, the different business lines, see if they can get any additional sources of revenue. Again, that applies to households. Find new areas, expand, diversify your income streams across various businesses so as to be able to hedge against this risk, preferably in the production of the provision of services that are non-discretionary by nature, which means that consumers have no choice but to consume those commodities. So they'll have a lot less impact on their earnings. At the same time, be more efficient with the expenditure profile. Cut out any discretionary expenditure that you can cut out, be a bit more efficient in the way you spend money, the way you move your goods and services around the country. So much more efficient expenditure, much more efficient expenditure structure, and expand the number of earning opportunities in your businesses. I think this is probably what whether large, small, or medium will have to do in the short time to cushion the impact of this almost 200% in some cases impact of the PMS increase. Nevertheless, I still believe that it was the right decision. It had to be taken. It's a pity that we had to wait till critical. It became very critical before we took it away. If we had taken this away many years ago, we wouldn't have this kind of a shock to the economy. But at the end of the day, it's better to eventually. It's a good thing that we eventually got rid of it.
So I do know that during COVID, the challenges that came with the pandemic was a necessity and also birthed a lot of inventions and innovations for businesses. Some businesses who used to import some raw materials, started looking inwards, the domestic value chain and all of that. Do you see any of this happening as a strategy for businesses to survive?
Well, not because as a strategy for business to survive when it comes to lack of, in terms of PMS, that's a domestic challenge, a domestic cost of production issue, and it might get to a point where those domestic raw materials are even more expensive than important substitutes because of the rising cost of operations in Nigeria. So I'm not sure if looking inwards, trying to get domestic alternative is the issue here, because the issue is not a lack of foreign exchange. The issue is more increase in domestic cost of production, which will affect every operation in Nigeria. So if you are sourcing for local materials domestically, it's going to affect your costs are going to be affected by the cost structure of those raw materials that you are trying to get from domestic players. So I'm not sure if that's the best alternative to handle the increase in subsidy. I would say that it's maybe one of the options to handle maybe the potential inflationary impact of the unification of the exchange rate if it is done or when it is done. But that will not necessarily solve increase in PMS cost. I think finding alternatives to PMS in terms of running your business, whether it's alternative fuels, whether it's moving to gas or diesel, which larger corporations already do, might be a better alternative rather than trying to source raw materials locally in an environment that is already highly inflationary.
And, along that line, we see the Lagos state government, they talked about the electric bus, which is supposed to start operations soon, hopefully. And then we also heard the Ogun State governor also talk about bikes that are supposed to be run electrically, I think. So these could also come in and hope that they would be affordable for businesses to be able to adopt it and maybe ease off on the use of PMS.
Absolutely. Like I said, that's the way to go. Find alternatives that are even better for the environment. They are cheaper. They create more jobs in the process. I think that's the way to go. Rather than relying on PMS, I don't expect any significant change. Significant is the keyword, changes to the price of PMS in the short to medium term. So yes, adopting efficient alternative measures for production and for providing goods and services, I think that's the way to go. Mass transit scheme. I also think that if government wants to introduce palliatives to cushion the impact, which is exactly what they say they're going to do, I believe that it's better to use non-cash-based palliative, because you don't want a situation where you are offering cash-based palliatives to take out the sting from higher inflation, and then you're adopting measures that even make the inflation even worse in the process. So non-cash based palliatives as much as possible. I'll prefer things like tax cuts rather, instead of giving cash to individuals, because one just increases money supply while the other doesn't, but puts you back on the same level in terms of purchasing power. The use of transport vouchers, electronic transport vouchers, for example, using the savings, if we can call it that, to pay off debt and put less pressure on the revenue profile of government. I think these are more useful ways to cushion the impact on businesses, to cushion the impact on households from this, than just giving cash, raising salaries, and things of that nature.
Talking about raising salaries, do you see this maybe bringing back the popularity of working from home? Because that would obviously reduce transport costs, so you might, deal with the desire of workers to ask for higher pay.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. From home, that's what we did during the COVID era. And some people would actually suggest that they were more productive during that period. But that does not remove the entire cost. That cuts out the cost of transportation, but it also the increase in PMS also affects the prices of food and non-food. So yes, you might get households' transportation costs to go down because they don't have to buy petrol in their cars or go into public transport. But at the same time, the impact of inflation, whether you're working from home or not, you're still going to have to pay those additional prices, and then you have that indirect impact coming in that will require again increases in wages, for example. So yes, that's a good. It's a good idea, but it doesn't entirely take away the impact of the subsidy removal from constraining purchasing power of households and businesses.
All right, finally, before we let you go, Mr. Kale, now let's get your projection for inflation. We expect inflation numbers next week. FDC sees it at 22.7. Where do you see it?
Well, I probably our own estimates are somewhere around that level as well for June, and that's because the impact of the fuel subsidy could not have impacted the results because they came after the inflation numbers had been collected. So for the next month's inflation, yes, my estimates are very much in line with those. But for the month after that, I'm expecting a 4 or 5% rise above whatever comes out next week as a result of the increase in subsidy. Many people think that's a bit extreme, but I'm not entirely convinced. I guess it depends on how quickly the negative impacts of subsidy on inflation passes through the different commodities, goods and services in the economy. The 4-5% might even be in August, but I expect that next month or the month after, we might see 4 or 5% increase over whatever the previous month is. So for next month, I think my estimates are more in line with those estimates that you gave from FSD.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Yomi Kale. We'll certainly wait next week, see what the inflation number comes out at, and then we will add 4 or 5% for June and August. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning, Chief Economist of KPMG.